Hello and welcome to Tales from the Pit, the behind the lens access to the entertainment world and some creative people involved. Today, we have front of house engineer Karl Heilbron. Karl, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. It's good to be here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm glad we can do this. Like I said, I was getting ready to go on vacation, so I'm trying to get as many people in as fast as I can. And I really appreciate your time to jump in and kind of join me tonight. So usually what we like to do is we like to start off with, say, what is your origin story? How did you get started? Was this always something you were pushing towards, or was it completely different? What was your younger days like, and how did you kind of move into this direction?
Right. I think actually I started a little bit different than most people. I didn't really realize when I was in high school that I wanted to ever tour. So I went more the studio route to start with. I was a studio engineer in the beginning, and then I was working on an R&B artist named Keith Sweat in the 90s, and we finished working on his record, and then he basically wanted to go on tour and was talking about it. And my motivation at the time was to not stop working with him, because I knew when he was gone, that was going to be pretty much it till he came back, and then we were going to pick up on the next record. So I kind of talked my way into doing his tour, which was not really his intent. So he was kind of like, well, I'm not really sure. I was not a front of house engineer. I hadn't really done anything but taken some courses at Full Sail, and really hadn't done anything live up to that point. But, I kind of convinced him where, I was like, well, look, I'm not going to just jump in to do that. He had somebody. And so he decided that he wanted me just to be kind of like ears out front, because, to see and make sure that all the records that we had worked on sounded like they were supposed to sound. That's kind of how I started. And it was a European tour. So my first tour that I ever did was a month in Europe, which was amazing and wild. That's a
great start. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was great because I didn't really have a job to do per se, but to go out front and listen to sound check and then just watch the show. That was pretty much my job. It was great. I loved it. And then, I think that was pretty much the beginning of the end, of the career choice, and then when we came back, I did, we started working on the next record with him. And then basically for the next 9 years, I worked for him, and then, did all his various tours. At some point, he decided that his front of house engineer really wasn't working for him. So they tried to put me in monitors at first, and I was terrified of that concept, just like, I don't think that's a good idea, man. If anything, I might consider doing front of house, really just thinking that it wasn't ever really going to happen. So one day he basically just, his tour manager, Terrence, called me in the office and was like, look, he wants to put you out front. What do you think about that? And I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. And then, that's kind of where it started. And it was at Pine Knob. And I remember it because I was completely terrified. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I'm out in front, mixing the show. And then, it just kind of went from there. And, just, how that is, you dive into the deep end and see you either sink or swim. And, I guess I swam. I'm not even really sure how, for the next 5 or 6 years, I was mixing his shows at front of house and didn't really know anything about the technical part of it at all. I just, I knew how to run a console and just kind of just winged it.
So going back, you said that you took some courses at Full Sail. That's Florida, right? Is that where you're from?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm from Miami originally.
Oh, Miami. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, were you prior to all that, were you like in the music scene at all? Were you a musician, and what was your, in high school stuff? Was music part of any of that?
It was, yeah. I was a bass player. I started playing bass in junior high school, and then in high school we all had like rock star dreams, and we're going to do that and that. And I fell in love more with the production aspect of of music, then I didn't really know when I was in high school what the job was, because I graduated in '85, so this is way pre-internet, and you weren't privy to any kind of access of anything to watch what the studio engineer actually did. So when I graduated high school, I knew I wanted to do something in music. So I just, I found Full Sail, which was super tiny at the time. My class had 15 students, and basically they just set up some tables in the loading dock for us to have our classes. And then it was attached to a studio. So we did all the studio work on an SSL. And yeah, I really loved that part of it, and found that I had like infinite patience to be able to handle, 15-hour session days, which just, I have a hard time doing it now because, the pace of the tour is so much faster. Oh, yeah. And one of the reasons why I really like it, I don't like the working on a record and waiting for 4 months for you be able to hear it. I like the immediacy of doing a show. The song is done, the crowd goes, that's pretty much, I know that's probably why a lot of us like it. It's just instant.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to assume the benefit for you doing front of house is you've already recorded the album. So if anyone knows the ambience of that album, it's going to be you. So I would think that would make it great, as long as you're comfortable with it. It would be a great team up of recording and then doing front of house and stuff.
Yeah, it was great because in the beginning it was basically like mixing on a giant stereo. Yeah. I mean, it was the ultimate listening place to hear. And yeah, I think that was one of the big selling points that I was able to convince the artist to give me a shot, because, I was like, look, we've been working on the records for so long. He was like, well, yeah, nobody knows what these songs should sound like more than the guy who mixed them. So, yeah. And it was great. Yeah, I had a good time. The artist was a little difficult to work with, to be kind, but I learned a lot, just doing that, just by being thrown to the wolves, and seeing if I could actually do it or not, and if I like doing it as well.
Right. And back then, I mean, we're talking mid 90s, early 2000s, whatever. Yeah. There was I remember back then I had to get any education on sound. There was maybe I'd go to Guitar Center, there'd be like a DVD or something like that. There was no tutorials anywhere. There was no YouTube or anything like that, other than, how do you set up your Cubase or something like that. Right. Yeah, back then there was nothing. You had to learn on the fly.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I was lucky that the system tech from 8 Day Sound was really nice. I don't remember his name, and I feel bad because I'd love to come across him again, but he was super cool and showed me more. And he was a little kind of begrudging that I was doing it in the first place, because you know how that is, that weird thing between well, if you're a studio engineer, you're a studio engineer, you're a live engineer, you're a live engineer. Rarely does it cross where it actually works. But I was completely transparent with him. I told him, look, man, I know nothing. So really, I'm just kind of out here on this old PM 6000 Yamaha desk with all the analog gear, which I knew how to use because we used it in the studio. And short of knowing how to run gates on outboard gear and stuff, that was pretty much it. He definitely taught me more than he probably should have at the time, thinking how green I was, which, had no clue what I was doing.
So yeah, totally. And to add to all that, what you said is your first tour was Europe. So, yeah. I mean, that's also, you have different power, whatever you call it. You have all these different things that I don't even know how you prepare for something like that. Was there a lot of challenges with that tour that you I didn't even think of this, or did it go smoothly?
I was lucky because on the European tour, I wasn't actually front of house, so I didn't have to do really much but watch and learn. So yeah, thank God I didn't really get thrown out in front till a couple of years later, where I had kind of an opportunity to at least learn what the deal was, how you ran it. And it was all copper, back then. So it was how to run snakes and, do all that. And, but again, yeah, that guy from 8 Day Sound, he definitely helped me in the beginning not freak out when I actually got thrown out front, for that first show, which was ultimately terrifying. It was basically, I kind of equated to just holding on, riding on a freight train, just holding on to make sure it doesn't fly off the rails. That was really my mission. As long as I could hear him singing and make sure that all the parts that were important to that particular song you could hear, then, that was basically what my mission was.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Well, I mean, that's awesome. And then you continued on. So obviously you were doing something right. So you keep moving forward in that direction with the artist. So that's awesome. Yep. What are some of the artists that you've actually worked with?
The first one was Keith Sweat. So,
yep.
R&B singer. Yeah. And then we did the New Edition tour after that. Yes. And just, kind of went from there. The last couple of years, I got to do Al Di Meola, which is one of my, big ones. And those are the type of tours that were, honestly, we're always kind of a little bit surprised that we get. I never really thought that I would even be considered for something like that. And then I was a little kind of intimidated because, it's just an acoustic guitar and, but it's the acoustic guitar, you know what I mean? So I was a little scared in that prospect, and I had to run monitors, and everybody said, well, he's really particular about how his stage needs to sound, and he needs to point the wedges like in this really weird way. And, and I was like, okay, why is his back? Like he would want a wedge that was behind him, but not really pointed toward him. It would be like toward the side. And then I would have one that was downstage that was also kind of pointed toward him, but not really. So yeah, it was tricky, in that parts, but he was super nice. And we did the shows and I really loved it. And then I've done like pretty much every type of show you can do, from R&B to like, prog rock to metal to, to country. It doesn't really matter what the style is, because I'm a fan of music. So as long as the music is good, and the artists are cool to work with, I'm cool with it. It
That's
doesn't really
nice.
make a difference. Yep.
Yeah. And, are there, cause the sound of, the different genres and stuff like that can definitely be majorly different from what you're doing from one artist to another, especially in the live environments. And then you're probably going from maybe a shed, which is an outdoor place, to an indoor place and stuff like that. Was there a lot of like fluctuation in a lot of that during like the first couple of tours? Did you have to really understand the difference between your outdoor environments and your club environments and stuff like that? Was that anything that was challenging, or was it just something you had already had experience and it was not really that big of a deal at that point?
Right. I took like a really big pause because I kept getting pulled back into the studio. So right. When I got the bug again to start doing it, I was like a house guy at a bar, basically,
Oh, right.
So we got every type of like bar band that you can think of, including Billy Strings was a guy who actually came through there. We did a couple shows with him. So I got to learn a lot of the weird things that go along with that. I remember one of the weirdest things that I noticed when I would do shed tours was the crosswind. It's something I never really expected to happen because I had only done inside shows up to that point. And that was a really weird. I remember the first time it happened, I remember thinking, well, like, what's going on with the PA and the highs? Like, why am I hearing that weird, like, phase fluctuation thing going on? And then after it happening a couple of times, I realized, oh yeah, there's just wind going across the room and it's affecting what I'm hearing. So once I got, understanding of what was happening with that, then, it got a lot better. But I love doing shed tours because just, you can just blast it and just the clarity is ridiculous. And we didn't have line arrays back then either. So, once line arrays started coming into play, then that was a totally different game, because it was like, wow, man, like this is just amazing. We can really get it to sound, as great as we want to. And that was a, revelation. I'm thankful that whoever invented line arrays actually, put them into play, because they're amazing.
So let's talk about your technique for dialing in your sound. I mean, you don't have to give away anything that you feel is proprietary or anything. I don't even know if that's a thing, but every sort of front of house has a technique they dial in before the show starts, doing the sound checks and stuff like that. Do you have any special techniques, or do you have anything that you do regularly?
Not particularly. I know that, mic placement is really important, even in, the different types of drum kits that you get, obviously if you do bigger tours, then you have drum techs and the drum kits sound amazing, in bars, like, drum kits are horrible and, you have to really like work on it. It really changed the game to me when I started getting my own microphones as well. 'Cause, before that, I basically just used what was handed to me, and I'd be shown, okay, well, these are the drum mics we're using on this tour, and I'd be okay. And once you get to the point where you can actually ask for things, and you have your own drum kit, then your mic kit, then it changes a lot, because what these mics sound like. So even if the drums aren't great, you can put your mics on and what frequencies you have to dial in to get it, to sound how you want it to sound. And my whole thing was too, is that I really wanted to be fast to be able to get sounds up quickly, because a lot of times when you're doing support acts on bigger tours, you have no time. Right. A lot of times we got, on the New Edition tour, God bless them, they would always be late doing their sound checks. So a lot of times we had none. I would just line check and and just cross my fingers on an analog desk where God knows what got moved when they recap the console. And so yeah, I was, my biggest push back then was to make sure that I could do it fast, because I didn't have time typically to fiddle with it. And, in the studio, it's an endless, I could spend an hour, 2 hours on a kick drum if I feel like it. Live, you just don't have that luxury. So you got to be able to burn through it, make sure it sounds good, make sure that the vocals are nice and clear and out front, and, and just run it from there.
Are you still running your current studio? Is
I'm
it
not.
still up? Oh, is
No.
that not a thing? Okay. And where was that? Was that in Florida?
No, it was in Atlanta.
Atlanta,
I got to
okay.
Atlanta in 92 when I got my first studio job. Just happened to, luck of the draw. I worked at Southern Tracks. So in Atlanta, we did, I worked with Brandon O'Brien, just like maybe 2 weeks of working at Southern Tracks, which was insane to me. And really, I didn't really even know what I was doing studio wise. I'd been working probably 6 years as a studio engineer. Oh, cool. And here I am, chief engineer at Southern Tracks. We did a bunch of bands, STP and Pearl Jam and Aerosmith, and Soundgarden. Yeah, it was insane to me to even think back now how much faith the studio manager had in me, to put me in those situations. And, I cut tape and, did all that editing and insanity that you don't have to do now, that I'm sure studio engineers are happy they don't have to do that.
Yes. So for some of, not everyone that watches this podcast is a musician or understands the recording process, but before it was digital, everything was on a tape that you, yes. When you wanted to do, or when you have to physically cut the tape if you wanted to have a part or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Can you talk about any of that? Can you talk about that for a minute? What was
sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. What typically what happened was Southern Tracks was a one studio room. So when the bands booked the room, excuse me, they would have the complete studio. So it was a 24 track on 2-inch tape, and we only had one 2-inch tape in the beginning. And then I think maybe a couple of weeks after Brendan started, we had two. So we had two Studer machines running, that were synced together. The band would play their takes, to a click usually. And we would, we would listen to the playback, and, Brendan and the engineer, Nick Didia was the second engineer. He would, they would mark, okay, we want the chorus from this first take into the, into the chorus of the second take, and then the intro from the first take. And then they would leave. And then I'd basically just write down what he was telling me. And then I would, physically put the tape on a splicing block and with a razor blade and just chop it and put the pieces together and hope that it worked, because you really had only maybe 2 tries to get the edit right. So you couldn't hear it. And if you made a mistake, you'd have to peel the tape back that from the splice that you made and hope that you didn't tear a piece of it or something, which, it happened in the beginning. And I have to go tell the producer of the band upstairs, in the lounge that, look, I messed the edit up, and he'd come down and try to find another one again. Nick Didia was infinitely patient with me in the beginning, and I appreciate that. And, but yeah, that's how we used to have to do it. And I would have, I'd have to spool off, 45 seconds of tape on the floor. And then I started marking it to know which direction it would come from, because once you had pieces of tape on the ground, I couldn't remember. You can't tell by looking at it which way the tape's supposed to be going. So yeah, it was insanity. And I never really understood, and I still kind of don't understand why I was trusted with that, to do that, to cut tape for these bands that, I was just kind of shell shocked of, just a fan kid, back then. And but they did. And, I got pretty good at editing tape and aligning tape machines. And and doing all that just out of necessity because I did it so much. I didn't want to make a mistake and I didn't want to get fired from the gig. So, yeah, that's pretty much how you learn a lot of stuff in this business, just to hold on and make sure that, you don't mess up to the point where they get rid of you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it was so easy to mess up back then. Way too easy. Yeah. Now, and I think if I remember correctly, bands had to blow, they were actually recording the full songs live together, and then would go back and maybe overdub and stuff like that. Or was it different for that? A lot of
right. Yeah. They, Southern Tracks had a big room that we would mic the drum kit in, and then they would have like the vocalist in one of the smaller booths. And then anything else that was loud. But Brendan was really different in how he recorded. Like he would have wedges on the floor. And then he would also have two subwoofers on each side of the drum kit. So isolating things was not going to happen. It had to be played decently. He wouldn't let them just kind of like, oh, yeah, well, I remember them having conversations. Well, what does it matter when I'm playing? Like a guitar player would be, what does it matter when I'm playing? As long as, I don't, we'll go back and this is guide tracks. And he's like, no, you don't understand. Like there's wedges on the floor. So everything's bleeding into everything. So at least please like play it close. So when we go back and fix your parts, or if you make some kind of mistake or a clam somewhere, it's not a problem. And I mean, just learning how to record that way was crazy. I'd never seen that before. I still really don't understand a lot of how it worked. But, it works and the records sound great. And I still listen to them today. And I'm just amazed at the low end that he would get from the kick drum and the bass. Yeah. So, wow. I mean, we did King's X as well. And that was a big learning experience too, because they would just go and knock them out, like I think the basic tracks were done in like 3 days. I think we spent more time getting drum sounds than the actual band playing together because they've been playing together so long and they knew the songs and they had been touring. So it was amazing. Those
guys are super talented. Do you remember what album it was?
It was Dogman.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Yeah. Super talented. I remember back in, I want to say it was mid 90s. I was in South Carolina and I was working at a recording studio in South Carolina. I think it was called Sunrise Studio or something like that. I don't forget what it was. And it was the same situation. I was more of the intern, fly on the wall guy. I wasn't doing the physical stuff you were doing. And that was really the only way you could get into a studio back then is either you pay or you were an intern or you had skills like yourself. One of those three options.
Yeah, I interned plenty. I cleaned toilets and and swept the floors and vacuumed the floors. Yeah, I mean, it was just part of how you got into the business. It was, and getting those intern gigs was hard. Even back then, I mean, I'm sure it's super hard now, but yeah, back then it was definitely like you almost had to like convince somebody to let you A, work for free, and B, maybe you were lucky to stick your head in a studio or get to actually sit in on a session in the beginning.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of fun. Very different back then, but also a lot of fun. I mean, there was really no rules compared to, I mean, now there are, time is money, but back then it was just like, get it done. So moving forward, is your primary focus now touring? Is that what your primary front of house touring? Is that pretty much what you do? Yeah.
I mean, for the past almost 8 years, that's been it. I have a hard time sitting in a studio now for those hours, and just listening to the song endlessly. I worked with Jeezy for a while, and he would listen to a song 8 hours maybe on loop. So it was right at the point where phones were becoming a thing where you can just like entertain yourself, and I would really have issues in the beginning where I didn't mind because you get paid by the hour, so it's not like it was a thing like financially wise or business wise it was fine, but I just kept thinking I could be doing so many other things. Like I just felt like I was being super unproductive from doing that, because from live, like I said, every hour that you're awake and in the room, you're doing something because you have to kind of stay ahead of what's happening. If you run out of time, then the door's open and you're still sound checking. It's an issue. So I liked the rush of the tour and of shows, which people think I'm crazy because most people don't like that. Like they get stressed and I mean, it's not to say that I don't get stressed, but I don't know what it is about it. Like, I don't mind it really. Like, as long as we're not super behind schedule where I feel like I have to cut the time to get sounds short, as long as I don't run into that situation, I'm fine with it. I'm cool with it.
It's touring is really, I mean, it's really exciting, but at the same time, it's really boring depending on, cause you're just in a room waiting on the, opening headliner or something like that. It really depends on what your role is and what's going on that particular tour, I guess. Hey, I just want to jump in here real quick and say that if you're enjoying the show, please check us out on all podcast locations and on YouTube. Search for Tales from the Pit podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. It helps us grow the show. All right, back to the show. Talk to me about what your maybe daily routine was or is as like front of the house. What is your day like?
Right. I'll give you an example. Like the last big arena tour I did was at Old Dominion. We did I work with Adam Joliak, who's an up and coming country artist. Our day started pretty early, like 9:00 in the morning.
What year was that?
Last year.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did, 9:00 in the morning was call. Basically we would set up our gear on risers that they would just slide on the stage and so I had a couple hours maybe just to mic everything and do all that. It's all in ear. So we had 3 racks of stuff, that we had to connect. And then, RF was always an issue because there was so many wireless packs. And God, I think we had like 15 maybe on that show, which was the most I had ever done up to the point where I started doing like theater shows, like plays, which is insane at 27 headset mics. So RF I was glad I was able to do all that from Adam's tour, because once I got into another one, it wasn't a big deal. Like I already knew how to use wireless workbench. And, but yeah, it was cool. Our sound checks were a little short. We had 15 minutes maybe to do sound check, because he was not the first act, but he was the second, and there was 4. So it was Kylie Morgan, then it was Adam, then it was Priscilla Block, and then it was Old Dominion. So the only thing I remember that was funny, it wasn't funny at the time when it happened, but Old Dominion's RF tech would always yell at me because I tried to get a jump on getting all our RF set, but the theory, according to them, was that we had to wait till we were actually going to sound check to do that. But with that many, in-ear packs and stuff, I didn't feel like I had enough time. So I kept trying to sneak it in. But literally, if I started to do maybe like too many, he would come and start just like, I hear him on the radio, like, Adams, he would say like, he'd be like Adams RF tech, stop doing what you're doing. I see it. And I'd be like, oh, dang, okay. So I have to like mute all my stuff and then, just like get off the frequencies. But so we would have maybe till noon, we would set up, and then, they would put our gear on stage. They would stagger them across the stage, where they would have a Kylie's drum kit on one side, and we would have ours, and then Priscilla's as well. And they were all covered. And then, when we got our chance to do sound check, like I said, we maybe 15 minutes at the most. We do like a couple songs, and then, I make sure everything was working, and that'd be it, Nice. That's all we get. Yep.
And then after that, you're just packing everything back up and rolling everything up. And
yeah. Once we were done with the show, I had like 15 minutes maybe to get our snakes off the stage, and just they would lower the risers down somewhere we can strip the mics off everything, and then on the wire. So yeah, we really I had to make sure that everything, all our stuff was off the deck and the stage within 15 minutes before Priscilla started. And there was a couple of times where she would run her intro and I'm still like wrapping stuff up, and I'm pulling stuff off the stage and pushing cases and, just, yelling at stage hands, oh, let's go, we gotta go. Because, we can't, out of respect for the next artist, I couldn't keep pushing cases and make noise while they were playing. So yeah, we had to make sure that everything was off, and that was definitely a race. Pretty much when everything was backstage and all my cases were pushed back there, I'd be like, oh God, okay, we made
That's
it.
When you can have some downtime to kind of just chill. Yeah,
we'd have to strip everything. At least I had time, and then I try to make sure that I I was done with my work before Old Dominion started, because, I'm a fan. So I loved watching them, and they're amazing, like live, just their interaction with the audience, and, and the players, and how the whole setup was. And, when they had moving like trusses with lights, and it was great screens, and it was awesome, so I wanted to be able to watch, the show. And I pretty much watched every one that they did.
Nice.
And then, it was great. I loved it.
I was looking, while you were mentioning that, I was looking through my, so I'm a photographer for the Bank in New Hampshire Pavilion. I don't know if you've been through there. And I was looking at, because I shot the Old Dominion show, but it was 2021 with Carly. Oh, no, that's Caitlin. Sorry. So I was just looking to see if you guys were on that, but I don't think you were.
Mm-mm. Well, what was the venue?
A Bank in New Hampshire Pavilion, outdoor shed, Guilford, New Hampshire. I don't know if you've been.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. I was looking to see if I could, if I had any stuff from that show, but that was a different show. So just checking. Well, anyways, yeah, that's cool. So, I mean, so you're pretty busy, like in the heat of the moment for the show. Do you get much downtime on the day of a show? I'm not talking about a day, an off day, but on a day of a show, do you get time to just chill? I mean, in the mornings, is that kind of relaxed for you, or is it still pretty hectic?
Yeah, I did a Happy Together tour last summer with like the Turtles and 6 other acts. Yep. The cool thing about that was they have a house band. So basically everybody that the artist would rotate kind of in front of the house band. So once the house band was set, that was it. I just had to make sure, like, okay, this one, like the Cowsills had an acoustic guitar I had to add. And, but for the most part, that tour had a lot of time between, let's say, like our setup, our load-ins were later in the day, like 1 o'clock. So by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, we'd have sound check maybe for an hour. And then that was it. I didn't have anything really to do till doors and then till showtime. So, in the afternoons that, I try to have more stuff to do. I did a tour for Christmas, which is another bizarre situation where I did the Nutcracker. So, it was basically like the tour of 28 Italian ballet dancers. And I had a lot of time because I did playback in front of house, but really we didn't carry any consoles. So, I had a radial and 2 MacBooks. I was running a playback, and then I would just hand them a left and a right here, and that was it. So I had a lot of time on that tour, and I loved it because I got to go to a lot of cities that I had been a bunch of times, but I've never seen. People always ask me that, oh, wow, you guys travel a lot. So, what's Seattle like, or what's like, Portland like, or I have no idea. I've never seen these cities. I've been there, but I only see the inside of the arenas. And for the most part, I noticed that if you don't make a point to go outside and get sun on you, you get super depressed. So I tried to make sure that at least I would pop my head out. But yeah, I toured for 20 years and I never saw any of these places. I've never seen the outside of buildings. But, on that tour, I was able to go to walk to local record stores and, and hang out and go look at stuff at parks. And it was amazing. I loved it. And I was thankful for taking that tour. I wasn't really sure if I was going to do it because I had never done that before. But, again, that's what keeps the job fun. Just, take gigs that are outside of what your wheelhouse is, because, you never know, you might really like it. And then on the other thing, it's like, the tour was started in the middle of November and went all the way to January 1st. And I never really worked those months. This is the first year that I've actually had a show on Christmas Eve. Yep. I never do them because, there's never anything really going on. So, for the most part, it was fun to stay busy during those months where I really wasn't doing anything. And I really got to see, we ended up doing 61 shows in a month and a half because the last week we had 3 a day. So, that last week was rough. I didn't see anything of those cities, but those other ones, yeah, I had plenty of time in the afternoon to hang out.
And I assume that if it's that type of show, it's a different type of location. So it's more of an auditorium possibly or something like that. So the room is probably way different, acoustically. And you, like you said, you're doing multiple shows per day. And you're running front of house. And I assume there's how many mics going on for that?
There was 0.
Oh, zero mics?
Yeah, no mics. Yeah. So I didn't have to worry about any of that. No wedges.
Okay, right.
I had side fills, for them, the dancers to be able to hear the music. But yeah, it was no gear. I basically had 2 MacBooks. I carried one of the smaller Pelican cases, and that was it. I'd roll out in front and, set my MacBooks up and my my playback rig, and that was it. I literally would play I'd play like a couple minutes of the music to make sure that the PA wasn't crap or mis-EQ'd, and and that was it. Yeah, I got to hang out pretty much for the rest of the day. There wasn't really any type of like sound check because there's no mics or anything. So, I just made sure that they could hear what was going on stage, and that was it. Yeah.
That's a great gig. I mean, if it's stuff you like, that's a really nice gig.
Yeah, I know the music of Nutcracker like back and forth. I literally listen to it like 80 times. Every once in a while it pops up on a commercial, and I just look at my wife and I'm like, like, oh my God, like I didn't realize how much of that music was in everything. Like I hear it constantly, even not even in Christmas. Like I've heard it. I think I heard it a week ago where my wife was playing something on her phone and it popped up, and I looked at her like, and she was like, "Oh, it's a Nutcracker." I said, "Yes." I already know, like just from two notes, of playing it, I already know that's something in that. So yeah,
you got some Nutcracker PTSD going on.
I do, yeah, from just hearing it from so much, and it was hard because a lot of it it's pretty lullaby in sections. Yeah. So I was beat from the 3-day shows, just where you start to like drift off, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't, because I have to be aware of what's happening in case something happens, which, what happens, like, we were running QLab, and QLab has issues on its own where, it would stop playing back, or it would fire the wrong song, or, it would jump to different scenes. And so, you had to stay constantly on top of it. But it was tough in a couple parts where I was just like, like, oh my God, man, like, I'm just drinking coffee like crazy, and, just making sure that I was able to stay on top of it.
That's pretty cool. Now, have you done any like theater type stuff? I think you mentioned that earlier with multiple mics and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I did New Jack City.
Oh, really?
Right after the Nutcracker. Yeah, the guy who was production manager for the Nutcracker was the guy for New Jack City too, and he asked me if I would do it. And I was excited about it because I had heard, good things about the play, and I'd seen the movie as when I was younger too, and I loved it. So it was exciting. I always like doing things that just that will challenge you. I think that's important. If you get in the rut where, okay, I'm only going to do like metal bands, or I'm only going to do like this type of band, that stops being fun after a while. And I don't ever want it to get to the point where it's not fun. I think you'll end up caring more about the tours that stretch your ability than ones that you start getting into a rut, like, oh, it's the same song, it's the same set. We've been touring for 8 months with the same band. Like, it doesn't keep it exciting to me at all. I've toured with bands I really love, like Carbon Leaf. I love their music. So I was a fan. I'd never actually heard of them before. I got contacted to do the tour, which is kind of surprising, how great they are. But, once I slid in and became comfortable with their sound, and they were happy with what was happening, I became a fan, and I loved every show that we did. And I went to see them last night, just to actually be able to watch a show and not have to work. And I was telling my wife, I couldn't turn my brain off to do cues, like, oh, here goes the guitar solo. And I could think, well, shit, I don't have to think about that now. I'm just watching the show as just like a regular person that's watching the show. But, you can't ever really turn your brain off, like, oh, here's a delay throw I was supposed to do. Okay. Yeah. Like, it's just, it's endless. You can never stop.
Yeah. You're hearing so much stuff no one else is hearing.
Right. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, the new front of house, I couldn't do these last run because I had a scheduling conflict, but the new front of house guy, wouldn't put delays in the places that I used to put them. And I remember thinking, oh, the delay's missing. And I'm like, wait, no, I'm not doing it. So it's not like I missed a cue because I'm not behind the console. So yeah, it was fun.
So let's talk about what happens to you during COVID. I mean, so you're out there touring, or were you touring, or what happened right up to COVID for you?
Yeah, my last show before COVID, I work at a place. I was one of the house guys at Masquerade in Atlanta, which has like 3 rooms. Yeah. And we were doing a show in Heaven, which is like the bigger room. And it was a rapper named Gunna. And I remember halfway through the set, people had already been talking about what was happening. It wasn't like it was a sudden thing when it ended, but we'd already kind of knew that things weren't going good. And we were like, man, what's going to happen? They were talking about shutting down shows, and this is even before where they were talking about shutting down everything. They were just talking about shutting down things where people were around other people.
Yep.
And yeah, I remember close to the very end of that show, I got a text from somebody saying that, hey, they just canceled my tour. And I remember thinking, oh my God, man, did that really just happen? Is that really what's going to happen? And yeah, that was it. We were supposed to do another band the next day, Buck Cherry, and it didn't happen. They canceled it, and I remember I was a fan of Buck Cherry. So I was like, dang, I was bummed that I didn't get to do the show, not really realizing that how bad it was going to get, and yeah, it was bad. I mean, from one day to the next, that was it. I went home, I drove back to South Carolina, and that was it. A year later, a year, 2 months later, yeah, nothing. We didn't do anything. It was rough,
COVID just wiped out everything, and it really made things very difficult for a lot of people. But I mean, for us, like I said, I'm a photographer for a bank in Hampshire Pavilion. We were shut down, and I was like, oh, what that means, we can't do anything. There's literally nothing to do. And I did one show all of 2020. The band Shinedown, the singer and the guitar player, did a Smith and Myers album, which is just like an acoustic album. And they did a drive-in tour outdoors at like physical movie drive-in theaters. Yeah. And it was really cool. It was a lot of fun. That was the only show I got to do in 2020. And it was an awesome show.
I work with a country singer that kept doing shows. And as long as they were outdoors, I did a couple of drive-in shows too. It was funny. Yeah. Because I remember thinking, okay, well, this solves it. I remember they would keep like everybody separated and they like section off parts. Okay, well, chairs have to go here. And we did some of those. And then, and during COVID, right after, the shutdown, I started working. I set up a internet stream for a church because I had done like some church service mixing as well. And was able to kind of like at least put through a lot of that because nobody was able to go to services and they needed to have, people watch services. So, I was able to like, maintain money coming in really. The work, and by doing that and setting up their streaming systems and did it for a couple other churches as well. So I was like kind of able to like limp through the shutdown with that country artist, like I said, and, who would just do random shows and didn't really care too much about, country artists. And he was in Georgia, and country artists a lot of times are like kind of rebellious in nature. So he was definitely like, his whole thing was that, the shutdown was a big conspiracy and, screw them. We're just going to keep doing shows. So we were able to keep doing shows, randomly here and there with any bar or any venue that would risk it, because I mean, remember, back then nobody really even knew what was going to happen. And we didn't really even know if shows were ever going to come back because they were talking about that, when the shutdown happened, that this is life. This is what life's going to be like forever, which is insane. And so we were able to kind of just like keep doing stuff and stay at least relatively busy, Man,
that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, in 2021, 2022, 2023, it's been nuts. The shows have been nuts from my observation. I mean, it's been like nonstop sellout shows. The shows just keep getting bigger and bigger, and the crowds keep getting wilder and more rowdier for each show that keeps coming along. It's been crazy. It scared everybody, because people were like, wow, like I'm never going to be able to see a show again. So as soon as it opened up, it was nuts. I mean, the first couple shows we did when it opened back up were all sold out, and I'm like, wow, man, it's lines of people, and everybody was just like, wearing masks, which is another super weird thing. Like I have pictures of literally me looking out of the audience from side stage with like 16,000 people with masks on. That's insane. Like I look at that picture and I'm like, wow, I can't believe that actually happened. Like, I know.
Look at that. Like, wow.
We had to do, it was a Live Nation rule that all of us photographers had to wear masks.
We all wear masks. It was rough.
Yeah, it was literally us in front of the crowds. The only people wearing masks for us, and then all the crowd, and then the bands around the other side. So it was that you couldn't go backstage due to COVID and stuff like that. So it was just crazy. Yeah,
it was crazy.
Yeah. So talking about traveling and your days off, you mentioned you like to kind of get out a little bit, but do you have like any special things you like to do to kind of unplug or anything like that from music and stuff? You got hobbies or something like that you like doing?
One of the things I learned doing shed tours with R&B singer in the 90s was I bought a mountain bike.
Oh, cool.
And I didn't really realize when I was able to get it. I bought it at like a yard sale that was across the street from the venue. I saw that it was happening. I'm like, oh, let's go see what's going on. I don't even remember where we were. And I walked across the street and I bought just a bike. I think I paid like $25 for it. And then I noticed that my mornings got a lot more fun because I was able to pull my bike out of the bin under the bus and just ride around the venue, a couple of times. And I felt a lot better. Like it didn't have anything to do with music and I didn't listen to anything while I was riding. I just basically just like putt around the amphitheaters and look around and stuff. You definitely have to find something that you try to find that doesn't have anything to do with music because, it's our job. So the only way to get away from it is to try to find something like, like a lot of artists I tour with, go play golf and, do all this stuff. And like Carbon Leaf has a couple skateboarders in the band. So they would go like skateboard and they'd always like be looking in their phones to try to find like skate parks and, and things like that. It's all about trying to keep yourself sane in an insane world because it is, it's crazy what goes on and what you see and what happens and the time and the pressure and, and things. And so, yeah, you definitely got to find something that doesn't have anything to do with your job, which is hard because I play bass as well. And I don't ever take a bass on tour. I leave them at home. So, because I started doing that too in the hotel rooms, I take my bass and I play, but I'm like, this is just like, I'm not happy doing this. Like I'm still listening to music. I need a break completely from anything music related. So yeah, the bike, saved my soul back then, because I was coming unglued, I just wasn't happy with any of the situation and, the stress and the pressure and being gone. And, I just gotten divorced too. So, that happens as well. Yeah. It's super hard to keep your home life going when you're gone, you're just absent.
Right.
So, yeah.
I was just going to ask, how do you balance that home life while you're on the road? Cause you're on the road. How often? You're probably on the road, 200 days a year? I'm just guessing. I don't know. Probably.
Yeah. Last year was actually my busiest in a really long time. And I was home maybe, like a month over the whole year, I'm really blessed because my wife now, which is my third, I hate to say that, but, who just is super independent and is a hiker and she goes like on these long hikes. She's done the Appalachian Trail. And so, she understands because when we started getting together, I was already doing that. I was on the Jeezy Jay-Z tour, basically when she moved to Atlanta for us to, officially like live together and hang out. I left like 3 days after she showed up, and I had some time off set up because I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted us to be able to like get to know each other and, and start relationships like you're supposed to. It didn't happen that way. So literally she got there like on a Monday and by Thursday I was gone for 2 months, so I'm very blessed that she's in my life because she's able to hold the home fort down and doesn't really resent me being gone really. Like she understands, that this is what I do and this is my job and it's got good parts and bad parts and, and we really try to work at it where we're mutually understanding that it's not an ideal situation, but that, we make it work and it's great, right. Super happy that, she's around.
You definitely have to have two of the right people. One of the things I learned from being on the road so often is when I am on the road, I am eating out every night. I am, doing whatever, I am not in my bed every night. And then when I get home, that's all I want to do is just stay at home. And the other person has been at home all the whole time. All they want to do is get out.
Correct. Yes. So it's definitely a problem. No. Yeah. And your inability to be a normal human when you're home too. Like I can't make decisions when I'm home because I haven't made any in a month, right. Literally like the biggest funny thing that we have now is just deciding where we're going to go eat. Like I can't make that decision. Like I have to be home for a little while to realize that, oh, I can make that decision now. Like I'm not just like going to catering or I'm just like, there's not just food suddenly shows up on the bus. Like you become like infinitely lazy on things that you have no control over. I have zero control over the schedule on tour. Like I just basically show up where I'm supposed to show up. A master tour. Okay. All right. Sound checks at 2. Okay, cool. You just stop worrying about that type of stuff. So yeah. And that's a problem too, because when I get home, I want to do that. I just want to like veg and just like stare at the television and not do anything for a couple of days, but that's not realistic. You can't do that because your partner has been at home, for a lot of it and wants to go do things. So, you just gotta like make sure that happens, which is the opposite again of what you want to do.
Right. Totally. What do you got coming up next? Do you have anything you can talk about?
Yeah. I'm doing the Cruise to the Edge next Thursday for 6 days. Yeah. And this is the one that I get a lot of a joke. I get jokingly griefed from my wife about it because she's just like, "Oh, you're going to do the cruise? Yeah, vacation on a boat? Yeah, great." Nice. I did Cruise to the Edge, which is like a prog rock cruise. A couple of years ago, I was tour managing Pain of Salvation and Clone. And mixing Clone. And I really liked it because I'd never been on a cruise before, which is really strange because I grew up in Miami, but my parents were like, nah, we don't want to go on a cruise. My dad worked for the airline, so there wasn't really any point to go on a cruise. Like we could go anywhere we wanted to. Yeah. So that was literally my first cruise and my first time mixing on a cruise. And we did, Clone did the pool deck, which is another crazy wind issue, like, wow, I just had to stop just like listening at some points, directly because it was super hard to hear the highs go, just like phase out and stuff. But yeah, I really liked it. And then this year I got offered to do it again. So yeah, I'm leaving on Thursday, fly to Miami, and then we're going to Cozumel and a couple Caribbean islands for like 5 days. So yeah, it should be huge.
Now for that, is the artist playing every night, or are you just doing like 2 or 3 shows? Are you front of house the whole thing, or?
Yeah, they kind of assign you a front of house to certain venues because there's, it's a couple theaters inside, and then there's the pool deck, which everybody wants, of course, because you're outside. But you just mix whoever doesn't have engineer, and for the most part, none of them really do. So the list. I think there's like 25 bands playing over that many days, and it's scheduled like 3 maybe in the theater in one day, and then like 3 at the pool deck, and they don't try to have 2 bands playing at the same time. So it's like, from 2 to 4 in one venue, and then from 4 to 6 at a different one. So, the fans can see as many bands as they want.
It's pretty chill on your end, so you don't have to rush around going crazy for sound check.
Once you get assigned, they'll bounce you around a little bit, just, so you don't get sick of being in the same room. But for the most part, you get to mix bands in the same kind of situation. And then I'm also doing another theater play with the company who did New Jack City coming up pretty soon, and that should be fun. I'm not really the information's hasn't been given yet. The schedule's not really out yet, but for the most part, I think it runs from March 18th to it actually goes to June, but I can't do the last couple of dates because I have to go on the Happy Together tour, which starts May 26th and goes to February 1st. So I'm trying to sneak in a couple of bands in the middle of the next play because I got contacted to do Brothers Comatose. Have you heard of them? They're like a bluegrass band, Americana band from San Diego. And as soon as they called me and we were discussing if it's a possibility to do it, I listened to them. I love them. So I'm excited to try to sneak in at least a couple of dates. So I think they're doing like 4 at the end of April and then a couple festivals in the summer. So yeah, it should be fun.
Nice. Yeah. So I hope you get to come up my way. I'd love to see you someday.
Yeah. That'd be great.
If you ever do, just let me know. I'll come on out and, hang out and we'll shoot the shit or whatever,
Cool. That'd be great. Yeah. I think the Happy Together tour pretty much goes everywhere in the summer. Okay. It's from May 28th and it ends September 2nd. So yeah, we pretty much go all over.
Sweet. Well, if you're ever in the Maine, New Hampshire area, look me up. Let me know.
Cool.
So, you get a lot. Are you, do you get a lot of your gigs through a company? Are you just out working your own stuff? Is it connections? How do people in the industry kind of connect and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's kind of a lot of the, like different ways. Like sometimes it's like word of mouth. Like sometimes, like I said, how I got New Jack City was from Akeem, who's the awesome production manager for Nutcracker, just happened to, he was just talking about it one day. And I'm like, hey man, what did you say about New Jack City? And he was like, oh yeah, we did it last year. Last year it was great. And so of course I'm like, plug mode, hey man, so, if you ever need, I'm never shy to ask anybody anything about work. I'll just throw it out there, because sometimes they don't even think of it. They just think, because they see if, you talked about a bunch of stuff you did last year, they think you're super busy, right. But you always got to be on the hustle to try to find the next gig, and the best way to find the next gig is to get it before you finish the gig you're on, so you don't have any kind of pauses. I did the Adam, Doliak tour on Old Dominion, and literally left Houston on a Friday, and I started the Carbon Leaf show. I had to fly to Austin from, I don't remember where we were before that, somewhere in Nevada. I flew to Austin to start the Carbon Leaf tour for 2 months right after it, literally the next day. So to say that I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to start Carbon Leaf is complete a lie. So there's no way. I was dead, by the end of that tour. But, you have to do that. You have to just jump, if you can't just jump from one to the next. I remember telling my wife I used to dream when I started to do that, because I would see engineers do that. Oh yeah, look, I'm just going from this one tour to the next. And it's not as great as it sounds. Literally you need just a couple of days to decompress and kind of okay, just really just to catch up on sleep,
Yep.
But yeah, there's a bunch of different ways. This year I noticed there's a lot more online places to find jobs, gigs is one. Bobnet is great. I've gotten a lot of gigs just randomly answering, Bobnet ad and and just persisting, to the point where they get sick of me contacting them, or they give me the gig. So really, I feel like either one is good. I got Adam Doliak from that. And so that's the trick, to try to stay busy and working. And, like I said, I'm not shy of asking somebody for a job ever. Right. I feel like if you're talking about, I'm always kind of cluing out, okay, wait, what was that band you're talking about? Oh yeah, this band's doing this metal tour. I'm like, okay, who's that? Oh, Illuminate. Okay, well, shoot, I've never heard of them. So I'm on my phone, listening to them, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, so, and I'll just keep on it, hey man, so when's that tour start? Or, did you talk to the TM and what's going on? Oh yeah, they'll contact you. And yeah, that's usually how it works out.
Yep. Yeah. And, like I said, during COVID, you just don't know when your next gig is coming from. So it's important to kind of be able to build connections and just show that, you your stuff, and B, you're an easy person to be around for extended periods of time.
Yes. Yes. I told somebody, we had a conversation. I did a Atlanta Showstoppers gig this weekend. Some rich guy's daughters was getting married. So, and this band's amazing. They have 5 singers, and the band is just excellent. So I try to do those when I can, where I'm home, off tour. And I told them that it's almost it's 20% talent and 80% hang, because you are on a bus with these people every day. So if you're not a pleasant person to be around, you're going to get booted off quick. And it doesn't, and I feel like that sometimes overweighs the talent. I've done tours with LDs that are really great at their job, but their attitude is terrible. So it's it's hard to maintain morale, from a tour manager's perspective, when you have that one person that's not happy, a disgruntled guy, so those guys will get, just sourced out, they'll just, next thing you know, oh, what happened to dude? He's not doing this run. Oh, no, we got this other guy. And this guy's super happy to get the job, and he's all bubbly and, and making jokes and happy and great hang. So yeah, that's usually how you keep the gigs, it's super important. Yeah. You have to know your shit, but it's really more almost equal to being cool, on tour, and just being happy to have the job. I'm always content to be able to work. I'm always happy. I've done tours in the venues that I've been 6 or 7 times in a year, and I'm always hey man, I remember the guy's name, who's the production manager, and I'm always oh yeah, this is a cool place, in Wellingford that looks like all the seats are purple, so I'm I named this as a Batman venue because it's literally purple and yellow. I don't know who picked these colors, but it's amazing. So I'm always excited to be back to places I've been, and you kind of remember how to get around too, because it's definitely a Spinal Tap moment where you can't find where you're going, and where's the stage, and you try to do that.
Nice. Well, man, I mean, I can't thank you enough. I mean, you've given a lot of really interesting stories, and I like I said, I hope I get to see you here pretty soon. And I just got to say thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Oh, yeah, man. Thanks for contacting me. Yeah, I was excited to do it. I love talking about this. Obviously, I could talk about it endlessly. So yeah, man, it's just fun. I'm excited for the tour season to start, and got a little bit of a late start this year for whatever reason. A couple tours got pushed back, and yeah, but I'm excited, man. I'm looking forward to the stuff that's going to play out in this year, and doing some shows and seeing fans just love what we do. That's the job. The show is the job.
Yep.
If fans come up to me and say, "Hey, man, it sounded great," or "The band's amazing," I'm happy. That's pretty much the mission. So.
Nice. Where are you on socials? Where do people go find your stuff? Are you available for it? Are you interested in giving any of that information out?
I am. Yeah, I got a Instagram. It's just my name, Karl. And then one other kind of weird hobby I do. I love taking pictures of stuff that we show, and I post like constantly. My wife's a content creator, so she's like my guru on telling me, okay, look, you only posted 2 stories today, and a lot of times we get caught up with doing shows, and I lose track of what that is, but I definitely love to post stuff, and as much as I can, and just show people what I feel like I love to show people what I see, like just the weird crazy things backstage, or how we set up, or I've done a bunch of time lapse stuff of just like from the first case rolls in to when everything's set up, and I love doing that, because I feel like when I started there was none of that. So and I love watching other people talk about or post pictures like, oh, we're doing shows at Madison Square Garden. I'm excited, my first time. And, and I remember when it was my first time too. So, I'm excited to watch that. And I'm excited that, I can post something where people can see, like I said, basically just what my view of life is, and the bus, and, and the people on the bus, and who they are and what they do. It's fun, it keeps me sane. It's not anything to do with music. So.
So talk to me. How did you get into that? were you always into photography or anything like that, or is it just kind of came up as a hobby?
Yeah, I was on yearbook staff and the school newspaper photographer. So I've always loved photography. My dad was a big photographer, so we always had really nice cameras around and stuff. So I always loved taking pictures, and I think I can take a decent picture. So I like to be able to take pictures of things that maybe aren't the normal thing that you would see, like on Nutcracker, there was a ton of stuff that I've never seen before. Like I've never been around dancers at that point. And I was amazed at how athletic they are. Like, I can't believe some of the stuff that they do and that they're able to do, and that they're able to do that many times. Like I said, the last week of Nutcracker, we did 3 shows in a day. Like, I was tired and I'm just sitting down doing the show. I can't imagine how exhausted they were. And I saw it, I saw like full breakdowns where they were, people were crying and they started getting hurt. And it's just nuts. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of being able to watch that scenario play out, because I had never seen it before. And also that I had a lot of time. So, I was able to post pictures of all kind of stuff, like just props and them dancing and just hanging out and stuff. And, so yeah, it's definitely something I love to do, and it keeps me sane again.
Are you doing a lot of photography like on your off days too? Are you just venturing out and doing stuff?
I don't, I don't, cause I guess I do it so much when I'm gone that, again, like I said, my wife's that's her job. So, she's always like, okay, we got to stay in your niche and, make sure that, what you post is what you're doing, So it's a little tricky to find things to take pictures of, because I'm literally like in the middle of nowhere. And, we used to have chickens, so I would post a lot of pictures of our chickens, So, but yeah, it's, I still like to do it. I still take pictures. I just don't post as much, usually home. So, I'm excited to go on the cruise a lot, because I could take pictures of the cruise. I love taking pictures of the cruise. Just the fact that we're making these shows on a boat is just ridiculous. Like, who even came up with that? And they sell out. The Cruise to the Edge was sold out. Like, I think as soon as they announced it, before the last year's one, it was already sold out. So, it's just nuts, and everybody's happy, and they're like on vacation to see a show. So it's really the best of both worlds, like fan wise.
That's awesome. What's your equipment? What do you use for camera stuff?
I actually I take pictures on my iPhone. Mostly.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because I had a Lectica, like a small, really great digital camera, but I was always afraid I was going to lose it because you tend to, on tour, you tend to be able to like keep track of most stuff, but things always fall through the cracks. Like I lost a jacket last tour, and I was always afraid that I was going to lose it. So I just kind of stick with what I'm sure is always in my pocket, and I can put it away. I might get a better camera in the next couple months, just because I've been wanting to take better pictures, because there's something like, a reflex camera just takes way better pictures. And,
sure.
And I gave my wife a 35 millimeter camera for Christmas. And then I realized like, oh dang, I kind of miss it. Like I don't think I'll ever go back to film. Like it's a film camera, but
oh really?
But,
yeah.
She has a 35 millimeter film camera. I can't deal with how long that takes to send it off and get it back. So, I might do that. I'm thinking I might just get a better camera. I just need to have a case with it, but then it's just something else I have to keep up with, and I have to travel with, and I fly with it. So it's like, I have my bag and my backpack and my Pelican, and I'm going to have to carry that, as well. So I don't know. I'm debating.
It is. Yeah. It is a juggle of, what to take and all that stuff. I mean, especially when you're, going for long periods of time and you don't know if you're going to use it. I mean, you mentioned that with your bass as well, too. So it's like, you got limited space. What's priority to fill that space? Correct.
Yeah. And what you can have your hands on too. Cause I can't travel to the airport with my bag. I travel with like, somebody a long time ago clued me into getting, when you travel on tour, to get like snowboarding bags, because they're really long and thin, and I can like cram them in any space. They're not hard at all. So I kind of do that variation. Still, I have like a Fila bag that I try to buy. And they last more than one tour too. That was the other thing a long time ago. Like the bag would never make it past a tour. Like by the end, one wheel was messed up or the zipper broke, and I'm having to like gaff it to get it home. These bags hold it together, so I appreciate that. And it's they're not hard, so I can squish them into spaces under the bin. And so for the most part, like I said, I have too much to carry. And my wife picks up my backpack and she's like, I can't believe you carry this backpack. It's insane. I'm like, yeah, but I have to have everything in it, and I have to be able to access it for TSA, because, they go through our stuff and they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, well, what's that? And I have a mic, everything looks like a gun, in your bag. And I understand it because it's all black and it's all like long and skinny, like, it all looks crazy. And I stopped carrying amp, they have these clip-ons that you put on an amp that you can put your mic on, but it's literally like shaped like this, and it's like chrome black. And I'm like, I stopped carrying it because every time they would pull it out, they look at me like, "What's this?" I'm like, "Oh, it's an amp. It's so I can put a mic in front of an amp." They look at me like, "Okay." And then they would do my hands, like how they rub your hands to make sure. Like I'm not doing this every time. There's no way. Like I'm just gonna leave it at home. So that definitely changes your perspective on what you can carry.
God. Yeah, definitely. You want to keep it as simple as possible. You just want to get through, especially when you're going across the border and stuff like that too.
Correct. Yeah.
Crazy. Well, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Sure, man. Yeah, I appreciate you. Yeah, doing this, and keep soldiering on, because we love to watch these, and we love to hear stories of other people and other tours and what's going on, and and I noticed after COVID too that we all appreciate other people that are working. Like I've close friends that do a lot of bands. Like I have a really close friend that from the Key Sweat years that does Fozzy now. And, and a guy used to be on Lady Gaga too, as well, Eric. And I love seeing what he's doing. We just love it. Like, it's like, oh, wow, that's cool. And then I can, and we're total nerds. So we can always ask like technical questions too. Like, wait, so what are you doing with that? Like, me figuring out the playback rig came from a guy that's doing Dylan, Marlowe, who's a drummer who has an awesome playback rig. So I asked him a ton of questions, and he was great. It explained to me what I needed to do to make it so it would work, because I hadn't really done that before. So yeah, we all love it. We love to see and hear what other people are doing in this craziness,
Yep. And it's nice to see. It's almost like a family reunion every so often. You get to see people when you go to certain areas that you haven't seen in a while, stuff like that. So yeah, awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Good times. Hey, thanks for watching this episode with Karl Heilbron. I hope you enjoyed it. You can check out our other guests, all our other episodes on all your favorite podcast locations, and on YouTube, search for Tales from the Pit podcast. And check us out on talesfromthepit.net, and we'll see you on the next one. This episode was edited and produced by me, Jason Lavasser.